It's time for the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer and Bruce Eman.
Shoots! He scores!
And now, with a trip around the National Hockey League, here's Jim and Bruce.
Welcome back to the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey. Rocking and rolling again. Chris Wassel here with me. You saw us do the Stanley Cup Final pregame shows on the Full Press Hockey Weekly Show, but we're back. We got some offseason news to talk about with you, some rumors as well. We just had Rob Simpson, SeattleHockeyInsider.com on, talk about those Seattle Kraken and the moves that they made. But there's some news we need to get to here as I adjust my seat and adjust the pillow that's under me because I need to. I've been sitting a lot these days, but, you know, it's good to be back to work here. Chris, welcome back, sir.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we were on vacation, even though we're not really on vacation because the hockey season just keeps seemingly going just when you don't want it to.
Yeah, it does. But so off the top, some big news out of the National Hockey League. And I think this is where we need to start. And our former colleague, and we've had him on before to talk about the Seattle Kraken, his favorite topic, Mike Straw. But we were on the show together when the news broke about Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville being for better or for worse, kicked out of the National Hockey League for their role in the Kyle Beach situation in 2010. Well, they were reinstated back on July 1st, and it only took 14 days, and Stan Bowman is the new general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, which should shock nobody, despite we know what a lot of people think, but again, trying to keep personal opinions aside, and you kind of knew this was coming when Kenny Holland was not going to be the general manager at the end of the year. You kind of knew this name was going to be the name.
Yeah, I mean, look, people have to realize at some point change was coming. Didn't matter what Edmonton did, you know, almost won the big shiny silver thing. Which, by the way, if you're betting Edmonton this year, no. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't look at the shiny number at the top that says Edmonton and even think about it right now. Just don't. There's no way around it. Yeah, I don't know how people couldn't see any other road other than Bowman, to be honest.
There really wasn't. I mean, there weren't really a lot of options out there, to be honest, if you're thinking about it, right? Donnie Waddell had already been in Columbus. Yep. So that name was kind of off the board. There wasn't really too many other guys that were out there that, you know, that were looking for jobs. And Jeff Jackson, the CEO, didn't really want to do it himself. And they went through all the proper channels, and that's all you can say, right? You know, you get the blessing of Kyle Beach, and we know new evidence has come out with Joel Quenneville. And look, Stan Bowman talked about it today. You know, he had to, right? They had to address this early on. This was going to be what there was going to be talked about. The fact that he's talked to Beach, he's been with the Sheldon Kennedy stuff. You know, he's gone through the programs. He's learning, he's growing. He takes missteps. Look, he regrets what he said back in, you know, when this first stuff was first brought up. He regrets not doing anything. Look, again, sometimes you have to learn the hard way to do that kind of stuff. You know, you always want to give people second chances. And look, I know what he's associated with, but is there a better guy out there for the job?
And that's the other part and the dilemma in all this, because you can sit there from a hockey standpoint and go, well, all right, let's go devil's advocate and go, well, what has Bowman done? What did Bowman do in Chicago? Okay. You know, we can go through like some of the moves that he made. Obviously, he is the one that kind of was instrumental. It's the irony, the instrumental in Panarin, but also the instrumental in getting rid of him.
Right. And was he there? And he was there for DeBrincat too.
He was there for DeBrincat as well. I mean, there's a list of moves that Bowman made. Obviously, the trade for Seth Jones.
No.
$9.5 million for what feels like 26 years.
And you think about it, right? Like Bowman took over for Dale Talon, right? And Dale Talon's put together 2 teams, and he
arguably a third that won the Stanley. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So Bowman takes over for Holland, and Jeff Jackson's really done all the legwork already, right? He's done all the legwork. The roster's complete. The roster's back together. Arvidsson's in. Savoyd's in. You have Jeff Skinner's come in. Everybody, the band is back together. The biggest piece is the Leon Draisaitl thing. Other than that, he's taken over a team that's ready to play hockey. He doesn't really have to do anything.
This sounds eerily familiar, doesn't it?
Chicago.
You have to do much.
He brought in pieces to help the team win their first cup. He brought in pieces to help win their second and their third cups as well. I mean, you have to, look, you draft guys, you bring in goaltenders, right? Think about it. Like, that team had to be deconstructed after 2010, after they won, and then he was able to build a winner right away.
Right.
So keep them consistent. So, I mean, look, put all the other stuff aside, right? Take the non-hockey stuff out of it. There's some good things he's done as a general manager. There's some bad things he's done as a general manager. That's the life that they chose. I mean, somehow, look, you and I could pick on this guy all the time. We still don't know how Lou Lamoriello still has a job.
Right. There are mysteries in the world, and there's pictures that Lou Lamoriello has of, I don't know, somebody.
And you just say to yourself, okay, well, again, and I'm thinking of names right now as we record this, right? And as we discuss this, right? Jason Botterill, I mean, what did he do in Buffalo? Not too much, right? Like, he's not just a good general manager. So, I mean, again, who was the best guy out available? And you have to say to yourself, I understand what a lot of people are saying. Even Stan Bowman admitted it, right? He gets it. People are going to be upset. He's not looking to change public opinion on day one, but he hopes that the actions of this team can persuade people to say, okay, he's changed. So that's all you can hope.
And you kind of hope that, even from a hockey standpoint, that he, hockey and life standpoint, that he changes, that way as well. God, I mean, you think about this now. The one thing that you always take away from these sort of things is the simplest. Do not do what Matthew Barnaby did on social media this afternoon.
Yeah.
Look, and I'm going to get killed for this, but a person who 3 wheels a Porsche and lucky doesn't kill somebody other than himself has 0 room to talk about this.
Right, exactly. 0 room to talk about.
We've all made mistakes in our life. That's one thing. But to specifically say, well, from hockey matters aside, you've already put yourself in a hole that you cannot dig out of.
Right.
And that's the one thing that Stan Bowman could not do today. And he didn't. He really didn't. He said, look, I'm not going to be able to make up for this overnight. And who knows if ever.
And he said, okay, like, he gets it. Like, he understands he's not changing the court of public opinion in day one. And he never changed the court of public opinion.
Yeah. I mean.
And that's okay. And that's okay by him. Because he knows he's changing. And there's a lot of people out there, right? And I don't want to get into, like, life lessons here and second chances, third chance. Like, you believe what you believe. And if you believe people can change, they change. And if you don't, you don't. And that's your opinion. So, and we don't want to go down that road on this show. So, again, the big news is Bowman in Edmonton, right? He's the new GM. Now he's got work to do, especially with Draisaitl. Let's see if he can get that done. We know McDavid's going to be it. We're just going to throw this out here, right? It's fair to say today, when we record this, as we're recording this, as we're talking about this, as this goes live, Connor McDavid is going to be an Edmonton Oiler for life. Like, that's a pretty fair guarantee.
Yeah.
Like, that one's pretty. Yeah, Draisaitl, again, the way he's talking, the way he's posting some things, you can read into some things. Maybe he wants to, if they can figure out, again, stay away from the shiny numbers right now on Edmonton. Maybe later in the season you want to place a bet on those Oilers. Okay. Again, and just use your edge. Don't forget. Betalytics, 25% off. FPH is the 24 is the code, monthly, yearly subscription. So that's the place to go if you want to get your edge on, especially if later in the season with the Oilers, if that number changes a little bit, you never know. But again, the Oilers have to take care of Draisaitl, and we go from there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of interesting, we go to Columbus.
Ooh.
Shift gears a little bit. We shift east a little bit. Go to Columbus.
Oh boy.
Don Waddell and the Blue Jackets introduced Dean Evason as their new head coach. It was going to be Tom McClellan. Could have been Jay Woodcroft. They decide on Evason. We kind of know why the McClellan thing didn't work. We couldn't get the money to work. Kings, I guess, weren't happy with the buyout, what they wanted to pay, this, that, and the other thing. Okay, fine. Jay Woodcroft, we really don't know. Was he ever a contender? I don't know. They land on Dean Evason. That's fair. Okay. He did a pretty decent job in Minnesota. A lot of people liked him in Minnesota. Did a pretty decent job. He's got a lot of work to do with this Columbus team. I know they signed Sean Monahan. Hopefully him and Johnny Gaudreau can find that magic they had in Calgary. There's a lot of work with this roster. There's a lot of work this team has to do in the Metro Division because they ain't competing for a playoff spot this year.
It is a long road in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And the question becomes, considering what Dean Evason had in Minnesota and had a pretty darn good team that for whatever reason could not win a round in the playoffs for a variety of reasons that are known.
Oh, wait, I mean, I think we could put the big one out there. Power play penalty kill.
Yeah, special teams were bad. And look, we saw it this year in the playoffs. What wins in the playoffs? Your
special teams. Absolutely.
Yeah, your goalie has to make a save. I understand that. You're primary goal scoring, but you don't get those without special teams. Your special teams goes in the crapper and you end up like the Hurricanes, the Rangers, and the Maple Leafs, and
so on and so forth.
You go down a very, very long list of teams, and their encounters with a certain bear.
Yeah, the Nightmare Bear showed up.
But again, with Columbus, you're not expecting playoffs this year. You're probably not expecting to even get out of the basement.
Nope.
The basement will be nice and toasty.
Mm-hmm.
But you're expecting some sort of progress and improvement. Mm-hmm. The thing is this. Can you measure that in points? And I don't think that answer is a yes.
No. Because the division's tougher, right?
The division's tougher.
Division's tough.
You're still going to have to do a lot of subtraction, ultimately.
Yep.
They have to figure out some way in some form goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not there right now. You hope to get a full season of Adam Fantilli because, well, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Liked what I saw last year. There's a lot of things.
A lot of things.
Columbus reached, but you know what? It worked out for them.
I don't know if it was a reach. I think it's the fact that he just fell to them.
Yeah, I mean, some argue it's like, well, you got a little lucky. Well, no, you have a damn good player there. That probably showed even above his expectation in one. Not just from an offensive standpoint, but from an overall presence standpoint. They played better when he was on the ice, and that was undeniable. So you need to see more of that if you're in Columbus and to see how he interacts with guys like Monahan and Gaudreau, which I think he'll do just fine with. Don't look at his age and get scared. This isn't a player that honestly plays at a level that's more of a 5 or 6 year veteran.
Yeah.
Somebody going into year 2.
I agree with that 100%. I like what Fantilli brings. Obviously, Johnson's still there. But I think they needed to bring – we've talked about this, right? They needed to bring in a veteran coach. They tried to do that last year with Mike Babcock. It didn't work out for obvious reasons. And then Pascal Vincent, it just wasn't the guy. No one really believed in him. There was a reason he was passed over numerous times to be the head coach there. They wanted a solid guy, and we're going to see what Dean Evason does in round 2 here. Obviously, he did what he did in Minnesota, and now he's back here with the Columbus Blue Jackets. And maybe they can get – I think there's different expectations here, and now maybe Dean Evason can grow with the team, because in Minnesota, the expectations were this team had to make deep runs in the playoffs. Now he can grow with this team and grow with these players and be there for a while. And I think that's the idea here in Columbus.
Less pressure.
Yes, very less pressure. Way less pressure.
I mean, he's got a few years probably to build up.
Yeah,
and so does Don Waddell. I mean, let's face it. Waddell gets to kind of mold a team in his own image.
He does 100%. He does. I mean, he was doing that down in Carolina. He may not have the restrictions now that he did in Carolina. Yes, the ownership spending money is an issue down in Carolina. Just saying. It's not like I'm breaking like the fourth wall here, or a kayfabe or anything. Like, it's known out there. Like, it's known that the Carolina Hurricanes don't like to spend money.
And it might cost them another player. Well, they think it's not going to, but
it might.
Kind of sidestep that one a little later in the show.
Yeah, we will. But again, good hire by Columbus here. All the coaching, again, they have to get it right. Now Dean Evason's in training camp. We'll get through everything, and then one of the final pieces of business here. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, 5 years, $4.75 million. It tells me that he's their number one goaltender, at least for the next 5 years, because I don't know if you're paying a backup $4.75 million.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting with this certain.
It's interesting that he gets a similar contract almost to Linus Ullmark.
It's a little eerie, right?
I think Ullmark was 4 times 5, right?
Yeah, right. But it is really eerie, though.
It is eerie because it's similar to what like Peterson and Kemper and Campbell got, and those 5-year deals, don't really work out too well. But again, he's played well there. Again, maybe this just gives him time for Devin Levi to, before he can kind of takes the reign. Maybe that's like, okay, maybe, Levi in a couple of years could be the guy, solidifying, helping us out here. But I also think that UPL has put up such good numbers. But again, 4.75 is a lot of money. So we're going to see what happens.
I'm considerably interested here to see where this goes.
Me too, 100%. I'm 100%. But again, look, Buffalo really didn't do too much this offseason. But they had to get UPL signed before his arbitration hearing, and they did. Now, we're going to see what happens moving forward with the Buffalo Sabres, because Jeff Skinner's not there, Matthew Savoy's not there, then Ruff's in there. They have a good defense, but again, there's not much offensively. They have good young talent, but there's not a lot of offense there either.
The one thing that we do want listeners to know, in case you haven't followed it, because it would be understandable given that it's late July, and
yeah,
this is the time of year where we're salivating over the potential for arbitration hearings.
Right.
One kind of wrinkle in it this year that really puts the huge kibosh on it.
Yeah.
Things aren't made public until something is done.
Right.
So Whereas in previous years, you'd have a hint of, oh, this is going to a hearing. This is not going to hearing. This was settled like right before the hearing. This was settled during the hearing, or there was an actual, you know,
arbitrating hearing
where a dollar amount was hammered out by the arbitrator. Now you just only hear the result. That's it.
Like before, we were saying, oh well, so and so offered this. The team thinks it's this. The arbitrator comes back here. That's how it usually worked, right? The player thought he was X. The team thinks he's Y. The arbitrator comes back at Z.
Yep. Now it's like, well, we skip all that. We just give you the Z. Maybe the X or Y that gets settled along the way.
Right, exactly. But UPL's hearing was coming up soon too, right?
It was getting close. So it did in this case help the player.
It did help the player. So again, Buffalo's got their goaltender moving forward, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do. You mentioned it before, right? So we still have some players out there, RFAs specifically, trying to get some deals done. Moritz Seider, Detroit, Lucas Raymond, Detroit. Marty Necas, we kind of sidestepped it. Marty Necas in Carolina, looking for a new deal. The big Easter egg is Jeremy Swayman in Boston. No arbitration date. He's allowed to get offer sheeted, but no one will do it. So it's like an unwritten rule. No one's doing it. I've heard 8 times 8 is the offer that's been out there, and it's been there since like the end of the season. Like that was kind of the deal. If they can get him at the Saros deal, that's a steal for the Boston Bruins.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, he's clearly the guy. He can play 55 to 60 games in this.
Right.
The question is, and it's always going to be for Boston, can they stay healthy through an entire 82 game schedule and a deep playoff run?
That's going to be the question
with this roster as it's constructed, because now there's no DeBrusk. Now you don't have obviously Allmark to fall back on. Bring in, don't make me laugh when I say this, the almighty Finnish Death Train.
Yep.
Known as Unis Korpisalo.
Zadorov's there. Lindholm's there.
Yeah. That's another like, whoa. Okay. I mean,
whoa.
I get it, Boston. You want it Lindholm really badly.
Right.
Ooh.
Hey, look, I know this is the full press NHL podcast here. But cross promotion to NHLrumors.com, where both of us write. And I had a series go up, contracts that make you go, whoa. Eastern Conference, both were Lindholm and Zadorov were on the list. And look, I understand you got paid for defensemen and you're paying for number one centers. And Lindholm to Boston was that was like a given at the deadline, even before that. They need a number one center. To me, outside of the 7.75, okay, I get the money. It's the 7 years that it just really stands out to me. It's like, okay, we're going 7 years with this? Okay.
Yeah, people have to remember, Lindholm has a lot of mileage on there for somebody that,
yeah, it's an interesting contract.
It's more than just age.
Yeah, it is more than just age. And look, he had a nice, decent playoffs. He didn't really have a great regular season with the Canucks. He was having a decent year with the Calgary Flames, but he really hasn't seen those numbers since the big boys left, Tkachuk and Gaudreau out from Calgary. So it's gonna be interesting to see what he does with like Pasternak's and the Marchands and everybody like that in Boston. But again, we're gonna be keeping an eye on that Jeremy Swayman thing, because that thing's really holding up a lot of stuff right now. That's like one of the big ticket items out there. Marty Necas as well. You said money might not be an issue for Carolina. Same with term. as much as they think they can move this player, I'm not sure. I think Carolina's going to find a way to keep him. I think they want to keep him. And I just don't know if the deals are out there that would better this team.
Look, they're going to have to pay him at least 7 something.
Right. Do they want to?
It's how many years?
Right.
And I think they got to do it. I mean, you can't keep losing players.
No, I don't think so. You can't keep losing players, and you can't keep, looking at a certain player on that team and say, okay, there's got to be a way to move that Jesperi Kotkaniemi money off the books and maybe open up some stuff, because that I know, there's a lot of tournament dollars left on that deal, but there's got to be a way for the Carolina Hurricanes to move that money off the books. And that's just a contract for me that I look at and say, okay, that's something maybe we can work on, and that opens up some money.
You have to do something.
Right.
Oof.
It's going to be interesting to see. What about, we mentioned Detroit. What about Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond? Really not a lot coming out of Steve Yzerman camp, but 2 guys that need a new deals. We know what Yzerman has done in the past, especially down in Tampa, when it comes to their young, guys like we've seen Kucherov, Point, the Hedmans. Stamkos an exception because of, he got paid right away. I feel like this is where I come in. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I think Seider, out of the 2 guys, could get the long-term deal while Raymond could get the bridge.
Yeah. You need to tie up the defenseman here.
Yeah.
That much is obvious. Yeah, did he have the best year last year? Could have been a little better. But at some point, you're kind of going, well, all right, we're getting picky. We're kind of nitpicking about a player who is, mind you, Jim, 23 years old.
Right, exactly. We're nitpicking.
I mean, we're looking at this from the sense of, okay, the guy bursts on the scene, he gets 50 points, and he wins the Calder. Then he drops off a little bit. Drops off a hair more last year, but in some ways he didn't. But he's a horse for you that plays 22, 23 minutes a night, and he's 23 years old.
The issue, I think, is maybe not so much the term, because I think it'd probably be a 7-year deal. It's just the dollar amount. What's it going to come in at?
And Detroit, you figure, has... what Crystal Ball says, right around $17.65 million on the cap.
Yeah,
basically what amounts to be 3 signings. So
right. With 2 of which are their RFAs.
Right. So basically, Raymond, Seider, and some depth guy fills the cap, and you're done.
Right.
Again, the question becomes, all right, well, what's gonna happen? And you gotta think that, like we said, Seider gets the long deal. Maybe Raymond gets a mid-bridge type deal, maybe like a 3-4.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe 3-4 year deal.
Instead of the normal 2 to 3 that we're kind of used to, maybe it gets inched a little bit out. Because I don't
know if you go Byfield. I don't know if you're going to go Byfield. I don't know if you're going to go 5, though, because Byfield got 5. He got that nice 5-year extension and that's a good number, really, if you think about it. The Byfield contract's a really, really good number for a player that's coming into his own finally.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Was it coming with a little over 6, right?
Yeah, it's not a bad number at all.
It's 6.25, I believe, for Byfield.
Yep, 5 years, $31.25 million.
Yeah, so right around that number. That's a really good deal for a player. Again, you see with Stützle was a little bit of ahead of the group, but guys like Lafreniere, guys like Byfield, guys coming in their own from that 2020 draft class, hampered by COVID years. Guys are finally coming into their own as players. So Detroit's got a lot of young prospects. Simon Evason's down there as well. They're just loaded with Swedish defensemen, and they got a lot of good players. Another RFA I want to touch on. You're wearing the T-shirt, as you can see as you're watching this. Those that are not watching, please follow along and subscribe on YouTube, Full Press Hockey Podcast. But if you can't, also subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Chris is wearing a New Jersey Devils shirt, and we got to talk about Dawson Mercer because he is still unsigned. Yes, he was qualified, but he's an RFA. Now, he doesn't have any of the arbitration rights, but you have to wonder what his bridge deal is going to look like because it's going to be a bridge deal at this point now.
It has to be now.
Because they don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, based on what the Devils did in the offseason, they have to bridge them.
Right.
It depends on who you talk to as far as contract projections.
I have my own thoughts on those contract projections.
It's fun to go through some of them, though. I mean,
this was like, I theorize about this, but I also have talked to some people. I think you could see somewhere between Jack Drury and with Capo Caco, and Capo Caco being the high at $2.4 million. Because you can make the argument Mercer's a better player.
Oh, he's definitely a better player.
And you could say, okay, he deserves that type of money. He's not getting Shane Pinto money because they just don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the projections out there are interesting. So, I went through a few of them. Went through the analytics. I went through, obviously, AFP. Puckpedia kind of has their own, too.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it gets, like, if you go more than 5 years, you're going into Looney Tunes money.
Right, exactly. And but they don't even have it this year.
That's
why they can't even go 5 years.
Right. So here's what the hierarchy looks like for people that are curious, like why they can't do this at all. Okay, a 5-year deal will come in right around just south of $6 million a year.
But they don't have $6 million.
They don't have $6 million. 6 years, even worse. Remember, they just snuck in Tomas Tatar.
Right, and they just signed the defenseman Hatka, and his cap hit in the National Hockey League is like $775,000.
And that's enough to knock that out. Now, like you said, the 6 year is $6.5 million. So that's out. 4-year projections interesting too, because that's coming in at kind of a budget breaker to a point.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Around 4.5, 4.6.
Can't do it unless they figure out a way to move money, but they just.
You'd almost have to go 3 years at that amount, and then you still have to move. You'd still have to move something.
Well, that's why I say if you do 2-3 year bridge deal at like 1.5 to 2, you're okay.
Yeah. I just don't I just don't think that's going to get it done right now.
No, I don't think it's going to get it done either. And maybe they don't even do a 2-3 year bridge deal. Maybe they only do 1 year and they try to kick this thing down the road again and then get him to the arbitrator. But I mean, again, I think it's probably going to, I think if you're in the Mercer camp, you're saying to yourself, you're saying to the New Jersey Devils, hey, there's a guy across the river who's at $2.4 million. Look at my stats compared to his stats. What has he done? And that was his qualifying offer. And my qualifying offer was under $1 million.
Right. And he was one of the, for those that don't know, oddly enough, was one of those players that kind of got the dip in the bonus money.
Yeah.
Entry level contract. Was it a huge bonus? No, but it was enough to push his average annual salary to like $1.35 million.
Yeah. So, but he got a decent bump. But I still think if I'm the Devils, It's a 2-3 year bridge deal.
Right.
I think it's like 2.5 million.
Right. And that's also going to, if he agrees to 2.5, which is a steal, that eliminates more than likely any potential overage penalty.
Right, exactly. So that helps
those have to be considered here too.
Right, exactly. You don't want to go over the salary cap, and again, this is a good problem the Devils have right now. So again, those are some RFAs. You want to obviously the Lindgren thing's a big thing for the Rangers. Carolina's got a couple other guys that they got to look at after as well. Rangers with Jacob Trouba, the world of everything that happens there. Is he going to get traded? Not going to get traded? Like that. That's something to watch. And then obviously, you look at some players, right? As we kind of put this thing together, it's players that are entering their final year on their contract, guys that were eligible July 1st for contract extensions. You look at Leon Draisaitl, we mentioned him. He needs a new one. Sidney Crosby, thing's not done yet. That thing's not done yet, right? That one's not done yet. And look, I don't think there's panic. It is a little bit surprising that it's not done yet because I think everybody had the expectation July 1st, boom, okay, Crosby's going to get signed, Penguins are going to extend him. He has every right to take this as long as possible. He does. He could take this into the season. If it gets past a certain point, then you have to really start to worry if he's coming back. I think he signs and is a Penguin. But again, stranger things have happened. I mean, look, Steven Stamkos, we thought was going to be a Lightning, and he wasn't. But I think Crosby's a different case, Chris. I think Mario Lemieux, following the footsteps, being with one franchise, same with Steven Yzerman, guys like that. I don't think that's the type of player he is.
He's molded a little differently.
Yeah.
And for Pittsburgh, well, you're pretty damn lucky.
Yeah, you are. And again, they're going to, I know, we're going to do what Washington did a couple of years down the road. Okay, that's great. It's all well and good, right? But again, it's interesting to see that, that Washington's further along on their rebuild than Pittsburgh is. So, again, just some names out there. Obviously, Marner in Toronto, all eyes on them. Seems like that band's coming back together. Brock Besser in Vancouver, that's another name. And obviously Igor Shesterkin as we get out of here in the Full Press NHL podcast. It's another name out there that, could probably bank the bank for goaltenders if you wanted to. So got a lot of names out there. Still some offseason stuff to go around, especially with the RFAs. But guys, this has been another edition of the Full Press NHL podcast. I've been your host, Jim Biringer. Chris Wassel as well. Check it out, Full Press Hockey Podcast on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again to BetAlytics. Use the code FPH24, 25% off monthly, yearly subscriptions. Guys, take care. We'll be back again real soon. Enjoy the offseason.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.